Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I think we may have a few more people trickling in, so we're going to get started at 12:01. Okay, I think it is just about 12:01 on my end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome to the Navigating Disaster Resources webinar. We're glad to have you here. My name is Courtney Walker, and I'm the Outreach Manager for Disability Rights Texas. And please also welcome my colleagues. Today we have Taisha Watts and Veronica Cortez, Community Navigators for DRTX. Myself, Taisha, and Veronica will be your presenters today. This webinar is brought to you in collaboration with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, Texas Appleseed, and Lone Star Legal Aid. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to our legal aid partners. I have just a few notes about housekeeping. This session is being recorded. A copy of the presentation and a brief satisfaction survey is going to be sent to you via email after this session. Your feedback is very important to us and helps us improve our future webinars, so please do the survey. If you have a question at any time, please use the Q&A feature that's enabled through Zoom. One of our experts from a collaborating legal aid is going to be available to answer questions directly in the chat. For accessibility, ASL interpreters are present, but you're going to need to click into the globe that's right next to the More button down on the bottom, and it's titled Interpretation. You can also enable closed captioning on your end as needed. Just a friendly disclaimer. This presentation is for informational purposes only and not intended to provide legal advice. Please note that the compilation of selected legislation is for informational purposes only. If you believe that you are directly affected by violations of the law or have questions about your specific rights, we encourage you to seek legal counsel as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about types of disasters. We're going to move on to types of declarations and the process for making said declarations. And then finally, we're going to get to state and local resources and nonprofits to be aware of. We really want to impart that knowing your potential resources ahead of time can help you prepare and build resiliency. You don't want to wait until the worst case scenario happens because at that point it may be too late. We want you to leave this webinar understanding the importance of preparedness and know the kinds of assistance that's available after a disastrous event occurs. We're also going to make a special note towards the end about some consumer awareness resources. Next slide, please. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. In this section, we're going to talk about the types of disasters and highlight disasters in recent history. So what is a disaster? A disaster is an event which disrupts and destabilizes the function and capacity of a community. We have natural disasters like earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, floods, droughts. You can also consider epidemics and pandemics in the natural disaster category. And then we have human-caused disasters or man-made caused disasters. And this is something that happens as a result of human action, error, or negligence, such as chemical spills, power outages, oil spills, human-caused wildfires, terrorism, and civil unrest. And then we have public health emergencies. And this can result from various events, both natural and human-caused. And this can include infectious disease outbreaks, natural disasters, chemical spills, nuclear incidents, and bioterrorism and other intentional acts are also in this category. Next slide, please. Disasters start and end locally. So the local government maintains control of all assets used in the response and recovery efforts. Additional resources can be requested at state and federal levels, as well as from other states. And we do this through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, or EMAC, which is a mutual aid agreement among states and territories in the United States. It enables states to share resources during and after disasters. So EMAC provides a fast and legally sound structure for states to help one another with a broad range of resources, like emergency workers, medical supplies, or specialized equipment. And they can do this without waiting for federal approval. One example of EMAC and how it works, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina and Rita came and happened, and this was actually the largest deployment of state-to-state aid in history, involving all 50 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia. Approximately 66,000 personnel, including 46,488 National Guard members and 19,431 civilian responders. More than 1,300 search and rescue personnel from 16 states searched over 22,000 structures and rescued over 6,500 people. Over 2,000 healthcare professionals from 28 states treated more than 160,000 patients. And nearly 3,000 fire and hazardous materials personnel were deployed. So that is a beautiful illustration of how EMAC works. Next slide, please. So it may not be a surprise to the audience here today, but we want to make a point of stating that disasters disproportionately impact people with disabilities for many reasons. In terms of evacuation and shelters often lack basic accessibility and staff trained to assist diverse needs. Arranging accessible transportation is frequently impossible during major emergencies, leaving many stranded. And then resilience on life-sustaining medical equipment like oxygen machines and the fear of power loss prevents many people from evacuating, as outages can instantly disable crucial devices. And so those are some barriers in terms of evacuation shelters that people with disabilities experience. Other barriers would include communication failures, such as crucial safety information not provided in accessible formats, for instance, ASL, Braille, large print. And then we also have the issue of inaccessible digital platforms. So emergency communication platforms and websites are often poorly designed, rendering them unusable for people with disabilities. People with disabilities are also often excluded from the planning process. Emergency plans are developed without input from the disability communities, meaning planners and workers lack the necessary training to properly accommodate diverse needs. And intensified financial hardship. Disasters worsen the financial burdens already faced by many low-income people with disabilities, hindering them from long-term recovery. So the result of these barriers is that there's increased danger for the disabled communities. Inadequate, non-inclusive planning places people with disabilities at much higher risk of injury, death, and worsening health due to medical equipment shutdowns and the exacerbation of existing physical or mental health conditions. Next slide, please. So why do we plan for disasters? Yes, we plan to be better prepared to keep everyone safe, prevent injuries, limit damage. But let's also consider that Texas is the second largest state in the country and has a wide array of events happening all the time. These are some of the disasters that have happened in recent Texas history, and we hope that this illustrates a deeper why behind why we plan. In 2024, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there were 27 confirmed weather disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each. These events included 1 drought, 1 flood, 17 severe storms, 5 tropical cyclones, 1 wildfire, and 2 winter storm events. Now let's fast forward to 2025, current day, and the year's not over. We've had $12 billion disaster-related costs through July, and not including the July 4th flooding, which is going to cost an estimated $18 to $22 billion. A few other billion-dollar events would be Winter Storm Enzo, the March Rio Grande Valley floods, April tornadoes in Northeast Texas. And in addition to those, there's man-made events that we've experienced in 2025. 3 chemical explosions, 326 train accidents or derailments causing 47 fatalities, 23 mass shootings in Texas. And then we also have major cyber threats, including ransomware vulnerabilities, defense evasion, phishing, malware, supply chain attacks, insider threats, and data breaches. So this is why we plan. Next slide, please. So whose responsibility is preparation, planning, and recovery? On this slide, you'll see that there are a series of circles going from smallest to largest, and then the center is individuals. And outside of that, it goes to public and private sector, communities, state, federal agencies. In short, preparation, planning, and recovery happens at each of these levels, but individuals must plan and prepare just as businesses, overall communities, the state, and federal government. How prepared you are in large part is going to determine how well you recover when a major event occurs. It also contributes to overall community resilience. So let me for a minute just describe how individual resilience and preparedness contributes to overall community resilience. It reduces strain on resources. When individuals have their own disaster kits and plans, they rely less on emergency services during a crisis, allowing responders to focus on more critical needs and at-risk populations. It fosters self-sufficiency. It empowers community action. It enhances recovery and builds social connections so that you can take a position in your community to help others prepare. And you can also be the voice of reason when something happens and help others. Next slide. Disaster resilience is the ability of an individual or community to efficiently respond to and recover from an event. To be resilient, individuals and communities must be prepared and ready, have awareness and education on options, choices, and resources to respond and recover. So in short, resilience is not just about bouncing back, it's about actively preparing so you have the necessary tools and support to do so effectively. Next slide, please. In this section, we're going to go over the Stafford Act, federal disaster declarations, civil rights protections and limitations during disaster times, and we want you to gain a foundational understanding of what constitutes a disaster declaration, clarity on your civil rights in blue and gray skies times, and I'm going to introduce some of the resources that become available when a federal disaster is declared. Next slide, please. So some context first. Disaster declarations are a formal statement or proclamation by government officials that a catastrophic event has occurred or is imminent, and it triggers emergency powers and provides access to specific aid and resources. An emergency operation plan is a document that outlines the procedures and responsibilities in the event of a disaster, and it establishes the overall roles and responsibilities, functions, and authorities of the various agencies, departments, and organizations involved in a response. So declarations grant emergency powers and activate emergency operation plans, and this moves from a local to state to federal fashion. Next state, please. Next slide. So the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act is the primary federal law governing U.S. disaster response. It establishes the process for presidential declarations of emergencies or major disasters. It outlines how the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, coordinates with federal assistance to state, tribal, and local governments, as well as individuals for recovery. The Act also promotes hazard mitigation planning, which we'll get into a little bit later, encourages insurance, and ensures cost sharing between different levels of government to reduce future losses and prevent duplication of benefits. You will hear that later, duplication of benefits. So when a Stafford Act declaration is made, FEMA's public assistance program provides grants to the state, tribal, and local governments, as well as certain private nonprofit organizations for recovery and emergency work. And after a presidential declaration, the program helps communities pay for the cost of debris removal, emergency protective measures, and repair the replacement of damaged public infrastructure. After a major disaster is declared, FEMA's Individual and Household Program, or IHP, is activated for the affected area. The IHP is broken down into two main types of grants, housing and other needs assistance. And we're going to give you a more detailed explanation of that in just a little bit. But what also happens under the Stafford Act or Stafford Declaration is that the IRS also has disaster-related resources that they roll out, such as automatic filing and payment extensions, access to prior year's tax records, tax-free disaster payments, retirement plan relief. They have a disaster assistance hotline that becomes active. And they also encourage disaster preparedness and have publications and tips on how to safeguard important financial and tax records. Also released under the Stafford Act would be disaster SNAP benefits or food stamp assistance, and the HUD Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery, which helps cities, counties, and states recover from presidentially declared disasters. Next slide, please. Types of federal declarations. When the governor requests a federal declaration, the request is made under the Stafford Act for a proclamation to be made by the President of the United States, which enables federal agencies to provide assistance for natural and human-caused catastrophes. FEMA declarations are emergency declarations, major disaster declarations, and we have the Fire Management Assistance Grant. So an emergency declaration is for smaller scale events or imminent threats, such as a fast approaching hurricane. It provides a limited amount of federal money for immediate emergency protective measures like evacuations. A major disaster declaration is for catastrophic events that are beyond the combined capabilities of state and local governments. It offers a much wider range of federal assistance programs for both individuals and the public infrastructure. And then our Fire Management Assistance Grant was developed by FEMA to help cover firefighting costs. Next slide, please. While FEMA coordinates the bulk of federal disaster response efforts under the Stafford Act, some federal agencies possess independent statutory authority to provide assistance and initiate disaster relief actions outside of the Stafford Act's presidential declaration process. This independent authority allows them to act immediately and address specific needs that fall under their purview, even before a major disaster is officially declared. So those agencies would include the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Health and Human Services, HUD, and Department of Transportation. They all possess independent authority to provide disaster relief without a formal Stafford Act declaration from FEMA. Next slide. Civil rights and protections. Your civil rights, civil liberties, and protections are not waived, suspended, or rescinded under a declaration. However, there may be situations that when for the benefit of the overall public welfare and safety that individual freedoms and liberties are limited. So officials can enforce curfews or restrict travel for safety, public health, and to prevent looting. There could be temporary bans on public gatherings, including protests, and they can be imposed to maintain order, prevent disease spread, but courts typically require such bans to be very narrowly tailored. Property, the government can, in rare cases, seize property for disaster response, but the owner must be justly compensated. And then freedom of the press. Restrictions on movement and assembly can interfere with news reporting, though many disaster orders exempt journalists. Curfews affect the press without specific exemptions, may be unconstitutional.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taisha Watts, and I am the Community Navigator with Disability Rights Texas. And I am an African American female with brown hair, and I'm wearing a purple shirt with maroon glasses. So today I'll be covering disaster aid and those federal assistance programs mentioned earlier. Next slide. So first, we have the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, and FEMA provides direct funds to uninsured or underinsured survivors under the Individuals and Household Program, or IHP, which covers the cost of temporary lodging, rental assistance, home repairs to make a home more livable, or direct housing options. And we'll cover each of those federal programs in later slides. Now, this federal aid is provided generally for up to 18 months, but can be extended per request, depending on if you qualify. Next slide, please. So under the IHP, or Individuals Housing Program, Lodging displacement assistance is a one-time payment for immediate lodging. And this is for survivors who cannot return to their home following a disaster and their homes are unlivable. So that upfront funds will aid to assist immediate housing options of their choice. And this could include the cost of staying with relatives, friends, and families until the survivor is able to find a more sustainable rental option to focus on long-term recovery. And FEMA expects this displacement will be paid per recipient to cover up to 14 nights of lodging in most cases. So FEMA may not require receipts for this particular lodging displacement assistance, but it is also very important to file a claim with your insurance companies as soon as possible. That goes for renters and homeowners because FEMA cannot pay for any damages or expenses covered by insurance. So please submit any insurance settlements or denial documents to FEMA upon review. And then also make sure to take pictures and keep all itemized receipts from any damages, losses, or if you have any contract work completed. And there's also under the IHP program, Serious Needs Assistance or ONA, ONA, and this offers $750 to cover any financial assistance that is related to any disaster-related loss, to cover expenses, including food, hygiene products like diapers, wipes, toilet paper, just any incontinence supplies you may have. And this payment will be in addition to any eligible assistance you may receive. And there's also the cleaning and removal assistance. That's $550. And this is to help to cover the cost of minor damage caused by a disaster to mitigate mold, mildew, and to prevent potential health or safety concerns. And this money is only available in certain disasters if you had property damage, but were not eligible for home repair or replacement assistance. And we'll talk about those assistance further. Next slide, please. Also under the IHP program, offered is temporary sheltering assistance. And through TSA, TSA is a FEMA program that is approved for eligible disasters. It allows for temporary short-term lodging at a participating hotel or motel, and FEMA pays these funds directly to the hotel or motel. So survivors will not receive this direct fund. FEMA pays it directly to the hotels, participating hotels and motels. And those who are eligible for the temporary sheltering assistance will be contacted by FEMA for eligibility. And to qualify for this, a FEMA home inspection will need to be completed to ensure that the home is unsafe to live in. There's also rental assistance that may be available. And rental assistance is intended to cover the monthly rent amount and associated utility costs, including gas, electric, water. Uh, for monies to find alternative housing, renting accommodations if someone was in a home and they need to rent an apartment short term while their home is being repaired or until they find more permanent post-disaster housing solutions. And to receive the rent assistance, you must request for it to be an ongoing assistance. And we also have the lodging expense reimbursement. And for the lodging expense reimbursement, FEMA may provide money to reimburse you for any lodging expenses paid out of pocket. So to receive this reimbursement, you must submit any viable hotel or motel receipts. And eligible expenses typically include the cost of the room and any taxes, but it does not include food or any miscellaneous costs. So it's always important to keep any receipts if you have any out-of-pocket costs. FEMA also offers home repair assistance. So for home repair, this covers any financial assistance to repair an owner-occupied primary residence, utilities, any rental infrastructure, including any private access roads, repair to any driveways, bridges, or that were damaged as a result of a disaster. And this is intended to repair properties such as roofs, windows, foundations, fencing, and landscaping. Next, there's also temporary housing. And for temporary housing, this is after any initial rental assistance is awarded. And then there's also the direct housing that also is available. And for direct housing, FEMA may provide direct housing assistance through leasing, multifamily leasing units, so leasing out apartment units, or through private RVs, trailers. So it may look like those portable RV units that FEMA trailers, as they were calling previous disasters. So that may also be under the direct housing assistance. Next slide, please. So FEMA also offers financial assistance through ONA or the Other Needs Assistance. And under the Other Needs Assistance, these programs are administered by Health and Human Services. So some programs under the ONA are personal property assistance. So for personal property assistance, this may be funds to replace damaged appliances, clothing, furnishings, essential tools, or computer or equipment that may have been damaged during a disaster. There's also funeral assistance that may be covered to help cover any disaster-caused funeral expenses. If an individual incurred expenses related to death or dismemberment attributed directly or indirectly to an emergency or major disaster, someone may apply for funeral assistance, and they would need to submit either receipts or estimates of those costs. Unfortunately, the funeral assistance will not cover any obituaries, flowers, announcements, transportation to services, or gratuities. There is also available medical and dental assistance. And for medical or dental assistance, if anyone incurred any disaster-caused medical or dental expenses, they could apply for this assistance. And it covers injuries or illness caused by disaster, loss of medication, includes pre-existing injuries that were aggravated by a disaster. It also may cover the loss of damage of medication, loss of dental equipment, any medical or insurance deductibles, co-pays, or any other eligible expenses. And also covers any loss or injury of service animals. So you will need to submit any bills, receipts, or estimates for this coverage. Also included under other needs assistance is child care assistance. So for any disaster caused financial burden for child care, FEMA may award up to 8 weeks of child care plus any eligible expenses for children under the age of 13 years. or if someone has a disability that requires assistance with daily living, they have to be under the age of 21. And then there's also assistance for any miscellaneous items, and that would cover any items used to gain access to a property or assisting in cleanup efforts such as chainsaws, dehumidifiers, generators, cleaning products, may fall under the assistance for miscellaneous items. And keep in mind, these items have to be purchased and rented after the incident to qualify for assistance. And we also have moving and storage assistance. So for that financial assistance, it may cover expenses of renting a personal storage property to store furniture. It may cover moving expenses to hire movers to move into a new residence temporarily, and you will need to submit receipts, bills, or estimates with dates and estimated times when storage unit may be needed, if that is available. Next slide, please. And there's also a few programs available. Disaster SNAP, or Disaster Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, DSNAP, will be also administered by Health and Human Services. And this DSNAP provides temporary food assistance to households in disaster-affected areas who experience a disaster-related loss of income or home. To be eligible, you must live in an approved county with a major declaration and meet certain income and expense criteria. If you are a current beneficiary of SNAP and are impacted by a disaster, you're automatically eligible. If you are not a current SNAP recipient, you would have to apply with Health and Human Services for the DSNAP program. And that can be done at any local SNAP office or at a disaster recovery center, or sometimes there's neighborhood areas where you can go online to HHS and find those community partner locations. And another program under FEMA assistance would be disaster unemployment assistance, and this would be administered by TWC, Texas Workforce Commission. And the disaster unemployment assistance would offer benefits for individuals who lost their job or their self-employment, who are no longer able to work due to a direct result of a major disaster for which a disaster assistance period is declared, and who applied but are not eligible for regular unemployment benefits. And to apply for this assistance, you must file with TWC and provide proof of prior employment or self-employment and meet eligibility criteria for the specific declared disaster. And also, another great resource available is crisis counseling. And this is a training assistance program that grants full reimbursement to mental health facilities to provide mental health crisis counseling during disaster. And Health and Human Services contracts with local organizations to provide this free service. Next slide, please. Our next organization is with the SBA, or Small Business Administration. And the SBA provides low interest disaster loans to homeowners, renters, private nonprofits, and businesses to repair or replace damaged property in a disaster. And the SBA, to qualify for the SBA, you do not have to have a federally declared disaster to apply for a loan, the SBA loan. such as in an apartment fire. That is an isolated incident. You may qualify for assistance under an SBA loan to rebuild if you've had an apartment fire. So that, since that's isolated, it doesn't have to be a declared disaster to qualify. Next slide, please. So homeowners may apply for up to $500,000 to replace or repair a primary residence after they've applied with their homeowner's insurance and received any settlements or denials. Then you're able to apply for these programs. Renters may borrow up to $100,000 to replace or repair personal property. And secondary homes or vacation properties, unfortunately, are not eligible for these loans. However, qualified rental properties may be eligible for assistance under SBA's business physical disaster loan program, and you can check out their website to see if a rental property will qualify for that assistance. Next slide, please. So these loans cover disaster losses not fully covered by insurance or other sources. Proceeds from insurance coverages on home or properties may be deducted from the eligible loan amount. And on this slide, it shows the terms of the loans. So the first payments are deferred for 12 months, and then no interest will occur for the first 12 months as well. And for applicants unable to obtain credit elsewhere, that interest loan will not exceed 4%. And for that, SBA will determine whether an applicant can obtain credit elsewhere. Next slide, please. So SBA also offers mitigation assistance to help reduce the damages in future disasters. So you can apply for a mitigation loan to reduce the impact of future disasters. And I'll go over a couple of examples of what each mitigation assistance would look like. But those loans can be increased for up to 20% to make building upgrades. So first, for flood mitigation may look like sealing a roof deck and elevating structures to prevent future flooding damage. Also, wildfire mitigation, that may include installing non-combustible gutters, fences, and gates, or removing roof, gutter debris that can be ignited by airborne embers. Under earthquake mitigation, that may involve strengthening and retrofitting masonry buildings and concrete facilities that are vulnerable to ground shaking. Under hail mitigation, you could upgrade your building's materials, like shingles, windows, skylights, and sidings to withstand significant impact. So keep in mind those loans for future disasters. If you live in a disaster-prone area, keep in mind you can apply for those loans with SBA. Next slide, please. The SBA also offers the Economic Injury Assistance Loan. And for that loan, this covers any small businesses, small agricultural co-ops, and most nonprofit organizations that are located in a declared disaster area, which have suffered substantial economic loss. You may qualify for this economic injury disaster loan. So what this loan covers is any cost or expenses that businesses may have had during a disaster, and if you had any financial impact, any loss of profit, you may qualify for this loan, or a decline in sale. could help cover those costs. Next slide. And the next program is for our farmers, the agriculture community, ranchers, that offers livestock assistance to cover losses of livestock due to droughts, due to fires, or any other natural disasters or disease. The U.S. Department of Agriculture might also cover any farm loans where you can apply for loans to help with production or physical losses and aid in recovery after a disaster. You can also apply for farmland damage assistance, and these are programs to help farmers and ranchers fund repairs due to disasters. And then there's also crop loss assistance. So if you had any crop loss due to low yields, loss of inventory, or prevention of planting due to any disasters, you can apply for that assistance. Next slide. We also have the Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. They offer the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Fund. And these are funds appropriated by Congress and allocated to HUD to rebuild impacted areas, to help cities, counties, indigenous nations, and states recover from presidentially declared disasters. And this is a long-term recovery program. So this program could take 1 to 2 years after a disaster to help rebuild communities. And this could benefit homeowners and renters depending on the budget and the plan for the community block grant. This states and jurisdictions must submit an action plan to be approved by HUD before this program is available to survivors. Again, this is a long-term recovery program. And communities will have an opportunity to provide public comment on any proposed plans. And this is where you can make your needs known. So if attend any local town hall meetings or community plans in your area after disaster to make your needs heard and known during the proposed plan. Next slide, please. So we've covered programs that offer financial assistance. Now we'll cover assistance that help with emotional needs during and after a disaster, because that can be just as important, if not more important, than those physical losses. So the disaster behavioral health is offered through the disaster distress helpline, and this is the first national hotline. So this isn't just specific to Texas. This is a national hotline dedicated to providing year-round disaster counseling. And this is a toll-free multilingual crisis support available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to all residents in the U.S. and its territories who are experiencing emotional distress related to natural or human-caused disasters. And I want to include workers, if you work with clients and provide direct care. Also check on your personal crisis and check on your personal emotional needs as well. And you can use this line for yourself, because us in the help field, we also have to make sure we're all right. And to access this hotline, you will call or text 1-800-985-5990. And then there's also check with your American Red Cross. They offer a host of online resources and trainings available to the community and to those working in our field. And then also check your local community based organizations for any personal and financial assistance they may offer. Next slide, please. So what can Texans do? So you can be informed. It's very important to make a plan and build a kit during the blue sky times. So being proactive about making your plan specific to your needs. Uh, Review evacuation routes and shelter in place plans with your family members and neighbors. Come together with any neighbors to see if they can also assist. If you have someone in your home that may need assistance evacuating, check with neighbors on a regular basis to see if they're able to provide that assistance as well. But communicate with family and friends on any shelter in place plans. Also, safeguard critical documents. Ensure you have copies and keep those documents in a waterproof and fireproof bag. Ensure community members and businesses report damages to the ISTAT, and we'll put that ISTAT information in the chat. And ISTAT is a way of capturing damages and helping to bring resources to your state. So it's very important to report those damages so we can see how much damage, they can see how much damage has happened, so we'll know how much financial assistance to bring to the state. But also sign up for your local emergency management alerts through your city, your county, your utility providers. Know your local Office of Emergency Management, and just understand all the available resources in your area and then apply for those resources if needed in the future.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veronica Cortez. I am a middle-aged Latina. I am wearing my hair in a ponytail. I wear bifocal glasses, and today I am wearing a paisley patterned shirt. So today I'm going to talk about local, state, community resources in the recovery process. So once a disaster has occurred, there are several nationwide organizations that offer preparedness, coordination, and recovery resources. The American Red Cross, first of all, offers emergency shelters, food, mental health support, which is very important, as Taisha mentioned. They might offer financial help, help for military families. And they do offer preparedness education for both individuals and communities. And you can reach them at the link provided. The United Way of Texas, they lead active disaster responses when disasters do occur. They often organize volunteers, they gather resources, and they respond to direct community needs. And their link is available to reach out to them. The Salvation Army is another organization that helps in disaster recovery. They provide mobile showers, water, blankets, safe shelter, and also emotional or spiritual support to those affected by disasters. And we are providing their link as well. Some local organizations that do the same to provide preparedness, coordination, and recovery resources are utility providers. And, you know, in those blue sky times, you may want to sign up for the options for alerts about power outages and other service updates. During the recovery process, they also provide a real-time map of where outages are occurring at the time. Your local food banks generally will administer emergency food assistance programs. Local weather and news stations, your radio AM stations are aplenty. So if you need to find out some information, look to your local AM stations, as well as your news stations. Habitat for Humanity is a local stakeholder, and they assist in the recovery process. So a little bit what Habitat for Humanity does is they provide those repairs at either low or no cost to the person who is recovering from a disaster. There are local community foundations, fiduciary agents, people who provide money and administer relief funds. And then your local library. Libraries are often connected to nonprofits in the community, and they can provide those local resources in the recovery process. So let's talk a little bit about consumer protections after a disaster strikes. So some protections for disaster survivors come from the Texas Attorney General. If you want to report any scams, price gouging of things like hotel rooms, water, gasoline, we want to report those to the Texas Attorney General at the link provided. Nationwide, the Federal Trade Commission has a website where you can report fraud and even register for consumer alerts. Now, when it comes to homeowners, there might be a consideration for forbearances or modifications due to hardship, especially if your loan is backed by a federal lender. So you want to reach out to your mortgage lender, to your bank. You want to review your mortgage contract to see if there are any considerations regarding forbearance or modifications because of a disaster. Under the McKinley-Vento Act, education for kindergarten through 12th grade must continue, even if the student or the family is displaced or unhoused. Integrated healthcare and in-home services must continue even if displaced. Disaster declarations, open up waiver programs for states so that people receiving these services can go outside of their MCO and receive those services so that there is a continuation. Duplication of benefits. You heard Courtney mention duplication of benefits at the beginning of this webinar, and this is something we want to avoid. So when a federal disaster is declared, there are different programs, as were mentioned before, like FEMA, the Small Business Administration, USDA, and HUD. And these federal agencies, or these agencies may offer financial help to disaster survivors. So to make sure that people don't receive more money than they need for the same loss, property loss, personal losses, these programs work together to prevent duplicate payments. So to avoid a duplication of benefits, agencies may require you to report any other disaster you've received. If you're applying for an SBA loan and you've received FEMA funds, then you want to report those. Same thing with the other agencies. You want to make sure you verify that information as well. And of course, you might want to adjust what it is that you're asking for to avoid being overpaid. So everybody's favorite topic, taxes. So other types of assistance can include things like help from other federal or state agencies or programs, insurance payouts if you filed an insurance claim after the disaster, any tax refunds, rebates, or reimbursements, or any private donations or money from fundraising. So here are some important reminders. Use all of the money for its intended purpose. So if you receive grants, loans, gifts, or donations after a disaster so that you can start the recovery process, you want to use those monies for their intended purpose. If you need a new roof, use it for the new roof. Don't go out on cruise. Okay, you want to make sure that you keep all of your receipts, invoices, records of any repairs or any replacements that you may have had done. So what happens if a duplication of benefits happen? Well, the name of the slide is giving it back. So chances are you have to give it back. So under FEMA's program, they're going to ask you for the money back, and that's called a recoupment, especially if your funds were used incorrectly. You went on a cruise instead of fixing your roof. There was a duplication of benefits. You maybe didn't tell one agency that you received funds from another agency, or if the money was received through fraud or mistake. Under the SBA will notify you if there is any action needed from you to correct the issue. And that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Under HUD's CDBG disaster recovery programs, they may ask you to reduce your total award, or they will reduce it for you. They might remove certain items from your budget. Maybe you had appliances, tile floor, carpeting. They might ask you to remove those from your budget. They might lower the amount of space in your home that they cover. Maybe they don't cover 300 square feet of your home because of that duplication of benefits. And they might ask you if you can pay that extra cost yourself. There are those taxes. Let's talk a little bit about tax liabilities. So a tax liability simply means that there's an amount of taxes that you owe to the IRS or to your state or local government. You usually owe taxes on things like wages from your job, bonuses, or investment earnings. However, disaster grants or awards are not taxable, which means you don't need to pay taxes on that money. Here's an important thing to note. If you apply for disaster loans, those are different. Loans are just that. Loans have to be paid back. Loans are not tax exempt and they're not forgivable. So that's an important thing to note. So any award from a local community foundation, disaster relief fund, are generally not going to be considered taxable income under specific circumstances. Crowdfunding, like GoFundMe, Fundly, they're a way to raise money online through these third-party websites. Now, if people donate to your GoFundMe or your Fundly, if they donate purely out of the goodness of their heart, out of generosity, and they don't expect anything from you in return, those donations are usually considered gifts. This means that they don't count as taxable income for the person receiving the money. So, for example, donations given for disaster relief are usually treated as personal gifts, and those are not taxed. I have to give this disclaimer. This information about taxes is for general knowledge and should not be considered tax advice. I am not a tax expert. So it is essential for you to consult with a qualified tax professional for personalized guidance for your particular situation. So income determination. So public benefit programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, TANF, and housing benefits usually have income limits that you must meet in order to qualify for them. And these programs look at your income and sometimes your assets in different ways, depending on the program. And that determines whether or not you qualify for these programs. Now, in most cases, disaster assistance is not counted as income, but you have to show proof of where the money came from and what it's for. So it's a really good idea for you to check with your program office, whether that's your Medicare provider, Medicaid provider, Health and Human Services, to make sure that you provide the right kinds of information that they require so you can avoid any mistakes, and therefore, create a longer wait for that assistance. Now, FEMA disaster recovery grants do not count as income, and these don't affect your income determination for the benefits like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, or other federal programs. So those recovery grants are not income, and they're not going to be counted as such. So there is a Texas map on your screen. Disability Rights Texas is a statewide agency. We are the state's protection and advocacy agency. And the following links will take you to our disaster resilience page that has lots of information about preparing and recovery after a disaster. You can visit our website, and there are lots of pro se or self-advocacy pages and information that you can use. Of course, Disability Rights Texas is a statewide agency. Now, you'll note that this state is divided into 3 pieces. Okay. And the Legal Services Corporation has divided the state of Texas into 3, and there are legal aids in each section. So Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid is, it serves the counties that are highlighted in yellow, and you can reach them at the link below. Lone Star Legal Aid is the lighter green shaded counties. So if you are living in any of those counties shaded in light green, your legal aid will be Lone Star Legal Aid, and you can use the link below to reach them. The darker shaded portion of Texas is the purview of Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. So if you live in those darker shaded counties, that's the legal aid that you would seek services from, and you can reach them at the link below. For free legal answers, you can visit the website for Texas Free Legal Answers, located below. And the State Bar of Texas Disaster Resource Manual is available for you to view at the link below as well. All right, so we have reached our question and answer portion. And I will turn it over to Stephanie for any questions and answers from the panel.
Hi, you guys. Thanks so much for being here. I forgot to put Landwith's website in there. Brittany, if you'll post that in the chat. And again, all of this will be posted on our website for resources later. So the recording, the presentation, that way you guys have that information. But it doesn't look like we have anything unanswered in the chat or the Q&A. So I'll give it just a minute if anybody has anything to follow up. Again, this was very broad and topical, but part of preparedness is also understanding the potential resources. Thank you, Brittany, for that in the chat. What could become available as far as financial assistance, recovery assistance, whatever it is. And it can be very confusing. Obviously, if you're in the midst of actually recovering from it, it's very traumatic. So knowing that ahead of time, it can help with reducing that stress and anxiety as much as possible, even after event. But, you know, for federal declarations, we have our big programs that come into play: FEMA, SBA, USDA for any farmers that are out there, agricultural workers, and then long-term recovery, right? That's a supplemental appropriation, but for homeowners and even potentially rental programs as well that may become available. And there are ways for you to advocate and get involved in those processes. So this webinar was just to introduce and kind of highlight the potential things out there for you to know about. And hopefully we can continue to expand on this, even delve into deeper, because we all know that we could spend a lot more time on each program getting into the nitty-gritty and weeds, and especially right now with our ever-changing political landscape and what our federal programs look like, and also, you know, disaster recovery stuff too. So with that, oh, I see do you have a question at one point? Oh, Jana, class action lawsuit. Yes, there was one after Harvey that was based on FEMA's apparent discriminatory outcomes in their programs and not not having equitable response for awards, right, based on race. So class action lawsuits are very tricky. One, whoever's filing has to certify that they have the resources to do it. And there's not a set number. It's just anybody could opt into that class if they meet those eligibility and requirements. But it is very costly and you have to show up front. The organization and the law firm filing is that they have the resources to do it. So class actions are very hard to especially for legal aids to file, right, with our limited resources and stuff like that. But you can have litigation with multiple plaintiffs that kind of represent different causes of actions as well that might cover the same thing. So there are some legal strategies around that, but class actions are very hard to certify procedurally. It takes a very long time just to get that. And then you have the actual docket time, right? And litigation time it takes to do that. So, and Jana, I'm happy to talk more about that if you want. And then, of course, thank you, Sapna, for that reminder. Legal Services Corporation, our partners online, funds legal aids, Trala, Lone Star, Landwith in Texas, and that funding prohibits them from filing class action lawsuits. So there's a lot of moving parts in that too. So no, there's no set number threshold or number of events for class action lawsuits. Did I see any other questions? I don't think so. Anybody else? Am I missing anything?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. We will have this posted to our website, the recording, the presentation, which will have the links and stuff in it that we referenced as well. And again, thank you for being here. If hopefully we can continue these conversations and provide the information moving forward. All right, you guys. Thank you. Stay safe.